Well, welcome to the Oasis podcast. We're glad you're joining us. I am John Mark Yoder. This is Wayne Weaver. And Wayne, we were talking about raising or training children in our last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to continue with that because we left with a cliffhanger on that one.
What was that?
And you were talking about children, a family that had just come into your home and went through the house, and and we were talking about training and principle. And I would like to actually begin by reading a couple of verses out of Colossians, because in this episode we'd like to talk about basic principles of building and maintaining a Christian home. Now that home is not only at home, but when you're away, you're taking that character with you. Mm-hmm. And so we want to talk about creating an atmosphere that honors God and demonstrates the power of the Holy Spirit. How do we do that in our homes? So Colossians 3:18-21 says this: "Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing unto the Lord. Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged." Now, in 4 short verses, it kind of gives us an order and a structure for the relationships of the home. Not in depth, but it gives us that overview. So picking up where we left off, you were just talking about, in our last episode, you had talked about how a house is not just a house, but it's a home.
Yes.
It embodies a lot of things. And when one family comes to visit another and invades that, so to speak, with lacking respect for this place, it brings an atmosphere that can disrupt an atmosphere. But how do we create that atmosphere in the home, and how do we train the principles that breathe the Spirit of God wherever we go?
I have something, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but I heard a funny little joke, all right? And normally I don't say those things. I don't over the pulpit when I preach. But for some reason, I'm sitting here thinking about this.
Well, let's hear it. Yeah.
You might get a little bit of a kick out of it. But they said, we're talking about the home, we're talking about wives. For some reason, when we think of wives and you want to tease them about something, they're always talking. They have a lot to say. And there's this joke that I just heard this week that men are going to be in heaven 30 minutes before the women.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Why is that?
When Revelation, it says that there was silence in heaven for 30 minutes, for a half hour.
I shouldn't laugh.
Sorry, ladies.
Oh.
I just thought it was funny. It was funny. Anyways, yeah, I don't look at women that way. It's just something to tease. Yeah. Anyways, I'm a bit of a tease as well. But let's talk about the home.
Yeah,
there are some principles that I believe that are very. I see that when I'm sitting at the kitchen table, when I'm sitting at our table, there's one place that I sit, and my wife sits to the left of me. That's our 2 places. All right, and as the family is being raised, they always see Dad as the one that sits at the end. Mom sits right next. That's the picture that is formed in the minds of my children, and that's the order they understand. So when I go to somebody else's house and I'm invited there, I go there. I will ask before I take a seat, so where do you sit as the father? Where do you sit, and where does your wife sit? I will not sit there. That's their place. That's one of the orders that I think that makes a home. The other thing too, you go into...
Well, and that's such a nice gesture of respect coming into a home. You are respecting the order and the authority in this place.
Yeah. And I think I just maintain that. I believe, I understand that. In the line of authority, in the line of even what Jesus saw with the one that... was not a ruler, but he was a captain over many.
The centurion.
Yeah, centurion. there was an order he understood. And I appreciate those orders. And if there's some of those orders that you understand, it will keep a certain peace activity in the home. Another one is you go into the living room. Where do you normally sit? I'm not sitting in your place. That's where the commander-in-chief sits. That's where the head of the home sits. That's where the keeper of the home sits. I'm not taking their place. That's the order. That's a principle that I have been very strong on in my own life, and I've taught it to others. The other thing is knocking on doors before you go in. You're not welcome. Just don't take it for granted. You're not welcome unless you are told you're welcome. All right? Because why are the doors locked at night? Why are doors closed? Because no one is welcome. Now, if they invite you in, now you're welcome. And those are principles, and I will not break those principles. You would never see me walk, even if I'm working somewhere, or I was working in the past, and I would knock on the door before I go in. My children, I taught them, when you come home after you're married, you're still my children. I'm asking only, don't walk in. Give one knock, and now you are welcome. It's established. So knock on the door once, and you are welcome to come in. We don't even have to tell you. Okay? That's only my children. And then I see people that, and I'll say this, I see people that they come to your house, they might be invited, they'll just walk right on in, never even knock. You don't even know, well, we were invited. Oh, wait a minute. It's not that way. That's a disrespect. And then you notice the children, the way they act and the way they are right afterwards, and you see, yeah, they're not taught any principles. They just, the floodgate opens and everything just like water runs everywhere. The other thing that I spoke a little bit about, when you go to someone's house, you teach your children to be respectful, like you are at home. You're invading someone's home. There's established rules and established things that are in that home. And if you're invited in, be aware that there's some things that they might have established here that certainly you don't violate that, like running in the house. You know, that might be something that family has established. Toys.
Or like exploring all the rooms.
Exploring all the rooms. Those rooms are not to be explored. That's unless you're invited to go up to a room, don't go there. I'm just absolutely amazed at, I think the other time I was talking about this piece of furniture. And that person went on top with their feet. He didn't take it. And then from there, jumped from there to the couch, and the couch back to there, back and forth. There's still scars on that piece of furniture to this day. And the reason we couldn't sell it was too expensive. Well, so it's an expensive piece. Well, and the parents were sitting right there. You know, it's like, what in the world?
But you made an interesting point, and you talked about respecting the atmosphere and the rules of this home. But how do you even prepare your children for that? Like, if you don't, do you have rules in your own home? Do you have an order and respect? How do you teach respect for other people?
Well, first is by example. And I think, to me, that is still the best way to teach anyone is by example.
So the way you treat others and their things, your children learn from that.
Right. And if I come home and I just blow off about somebody, it's somebody that maybe misused me or something happened, and if I just blow off, I was always careful. Now, being a preacher, you'd have a whole book of things that you could talk about, but I was always careful to not talk. And that's one thing I'll say about my dad. I have never, in all my lifetime, ever heard him talk against someone or talk bad to someone. And if somebody would start at the table, he'd say, no, we don't talk. Or in Dutch, it's "we schwätzen niet geluid." We don't speak against people. My dad was very strong in that. And at the end of his life, I concluded I never heard him ever say a bad word about somebody else. That was my dad. He was brought up in a very respectable place, and he didn't have a mother from way young. He just had, his mom died early in his life. And then he was raised in a CPS camp and then on a big dairy farm, big operation in Maryland, where it was very, statesman-like activity all the time. Big table, they had mates in the home and everything was order. And that's where he taught us, you can't do like this when you eat. Arms stay off. And when you eat, you don't stand. You sit down when you eat. He'd say this, if you're eating, you sit down. He says, only animals walk around when they eat. These are things that my dad taught. He didn't just say, now sit down. He said, only animals eat that way. I don't want you to eat that way. Okay, that's very respectable. And so my dad learned very good etiquette on a lot of things, even though he was, people would say that he was not taught in those areas simply because he was not part of society, but he was taught, and he had a very high standard of etiquette and the principles of it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just good values. Anytime that you can instill values in the home, do it. Instill values. Values are good. It's not just stop doing that. You instruct them why it's not good to do that. This is why I want you to, walk around when you go away, look clean, look kept. In the way you act, look kept. My father, and I was Amish. I was born and raised Amish. So, and they have these straight coats that they wear like they did in Europe. Yeah. That's where it came from. Okay. In fact, Leonard Ravenhill asked me, when he heard who I was, he said, do the Amish still wear those English, and he had a name for it, like they wear in England? And I said, yes. And he said, oh, those look so stylish. He said that, and the Amish would never think that way, but that was fad at one time. Mm-hmm. And and if you want to go really high class, you'll have that in some of the big castles and things and so forth, where there's different quarters for different employees and functions. What made me say that? What made me say that?
I'm not sure. You were talking about dressing and just presentation.
And so when we left the Amish, and because it was this type of a coat was kind of we have to. It's part of salvation almost. Mm-hmm. Not really, but almost. Yeah, because if you don't wear it,
you might do a lot of things, but he'd never stop wearing a straight coat.
Just don't do that. Yeah. So having gone away, I stopped wearing a coat. Period, because I didn't know what to wear. And, some of those things are deeply ingrained. And so I was at a viewing of of somebody that died, and my father was there too and saw me. And I walked through the viewing line without a coat. And I saw him the next week, and he said something to me. He said, Wayne, I saw you went through the viewing line, you didn't have a coat on. And, I've taught you all that that's very disrespectful. And I said, well, Dad, my reason for not doing that is because I would wear this type probably and thought people would be offended. Said, no, you wear a coat. This did not offend him, this versus this. What offended him, that you're not wearing anything. Not wearing anything at all. And to say a little bit about that, I see any more now. And I think since COVID, a lot of this stuff has been brought in. But I like to dress respectful when I go to a viewing, because that's what I'm doing. I am paying my last, respects. Mm-hmm. The principle behind that is then be respectful, then dress respectful. And so for me, I dress up. I look good clothes because I'm paying respect. And so even in my clothes shall do that. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons that I really believe that in church here, we are known to be dressed up. It's to respect and honor each other. We don't come to church in a sloppy old way, shirts hanging out, just in a sloppy way. There's some fads that suggest that, but I'm saying because of reckless living. But we come to church and we're clean, we prepare ourselves, and then we respect each other the way we carry ourselves. The way I shake my hand. I shake my hand. I want them to know I shook your hand.
You want them to know there's some light there. Yeah.
You hear that, you have these people
fish,
like a fish, like take a hold of a fish tail. It's those things you teach your children. Be respectful, be statesmanlike, and this is how you gain respect of people. And I mean, you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their demeanor. We carry a demeanor. And let's maintain that demeanor as excellence. You learn that at home. You learn it from the father, from the mother. This is what you learn. Respect, honoring each other, and thinking highly of each other. And this is just built into me, that I look at everyone as older than I. Still to this day, I'm almost 70. I look at 40-year-old people, and I just think they're older than I. They're older than I. And that's how I honor them. I honor them as being older than I. They know more than I. They are better than I. They are, and I'm not demeaning myself, but this is how I admire people.
Showing value.
Yeah. So, and that has to be instilled into your children, and it will make them excellent. It will make them do things that are excellent. You want to set a foundation of good for them. Those are things you set in as a foundation. Those are solid principles. Forgiveness is another thing. I see some families just about can't forgive. Some families, they cling to each other, and if one of them gets violated, they all stick together. And if they don't stick together when someone violates them, then they fight amongst each other.
Right. They'll fight amongst each other until you come against one of them. You even agree with them sometimes, and they'll turn against you.
Yeah. Now, I notice in my life, I've noticed that there's some people, and it's often reflective of parents, they can't forgive. One of the signs you'll see for a parent that can't forgive is you never hear him apologize. You don't never hear a parent say, "I'm sorry. I was wrong." Those are people that have problems forgiving. I've watched that. I've seen it in husband-wives. I've seen it in their children. And then they carry chips on their backs for years. Those are principles, is that, that was wronged against me, but we forgive. And I've just explained yesterday to somebody that I met with about forgiveness, how it works. Because, when you have unforgiveness, if I have unforgiveness toward you, say you do something to me and I'm not wanting to forgive you. You said something, all right? So what you did is you took that hand and you latched onto me, all right? And that hurt. Okay, so what do I want to do? Do I feel like I need to punch you back with the other hand? And now your hand is still here because it still hurts. But for me then to forgive you is releasing your hand. See, now you're not hurting me anymore. Until you forgive someone, they keep hurting you.
They keep hurting you. They keep hanging on.
So you can get rid of that. And that gets taught in the home. It gets taught in the home. And you don't just say, now you need to forgive each other. You have to make them say it. I forgive you. I don't hold it against you. All right? Now go play. All right? But it gets exemplified in those ways. The way we are supposed to walk in decency of life is what we train them when they're young. By exemplifying it in our lives personally, that's training. Number 2 is by having them go through the motions of that.
Discipling them in that. Wow, that's so good. Well, we're going to bring this to a close. This has been really good, very insightful.
Yeah, I wish I would have known these things years ago.
Wouldn't that be so helpful?
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, I think in another episode, we have a child born and they come without a manual.
Yeah.
But God is gracious and He forgives, so we forgive. That's a very good principle there, the expression of forgiveness.
Amen.
God bless you for joining us. We look forward to having you join us again in another episode. God bless.